Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This video here has been a long time coming. Been wanting to do it for a while, but I kept changing my approach to it. Finally figure out how I want to handle this topic. We have a list video, low investment squads. Before we begin, it's important to understand the overarching philosophy behind this video and to a larger extent this channel. I talk about this all the time, but check out this methods video if you're unfamiliar about my obsession with Gear 11 and why I try to exploit it. But the TLDR is Gear 11 is one of the fastest ways to rapidly develop your roster because the gear it takes to go from Gear 11 to Gear 12 usually is so high that you can take multiple characters up to Gear 11 for that same cost. And that is what we're trying to exploit, is efficiently deploying our resources to build a deep roster. Case in point is Nest. If you look at the data at SWGOH, here is all the gear that it takes to bring Nest up to Gear 13. And this completely misrepresents how easy of a gear Nest is up to Gear 11. When we look at just the gearing requirements to go from Gear 0 up to Gear 11, it's only 2 full Carbantes, no stun guns, only 1 stun cuff, and only 1 gold eyeballs. She is very, very cheap, and a Gear 11 Nest can be used on offense without issue. It can take out Gear 12 Ewoks. This is exactly what I'm trying to illustrate with these types of low investment squads that you can exploit to get the maximum use out of your roster. Started doing this back when Grand Arena was first introduced, when the matchmaking algorithm was based on total GP. And in those days I had a very wide roster and I was getting killed by players who had very narrow Gear 12 rosters. And I knew I couldn't catch up or compete with those guys by going after Gear 12. So instead I focused on Gear 11 because I could do that fast. And in order to do that fast, I looked for the squads that were the lowest investment and would give me the biggest return. And while in the process of doing that, CG changed the matchmaking algorithm, focused on top 80, and from that day forward I started just crushing my opponents because I had a very lean roster completely by accident, just by trying to refocus how I was strategizing my roster. This spreadsheet here supplements this video. I'm going to have it on Discord and in the description below. It is not comprehensive, doesn't have every character, doesn't have all of the gear. The gear is limited just to the gear that remains a problem for longtime players. You'll never have enough of these. So there are daily challenge gear like hypo syringes or those keypads that are used at a high rate for new players, but eventually you grow out of them. I'm not showing those, even those are very high demand gear pieces for newer players. Last piece of context here is we're not just looking for a low investment squad. What we're looking for is a return on investment, because an Akbar squad with like Luke, Leia, Stormtrooper Han, that's a low gear squad, but they're not able to do anything. We are looking for low investment that can give us something back. In contrast, we also need to know what a bad gear looks like, and the Phoenix are the worst in the game, and it kills me inside when I see newer players or younger players with high gear Phoenix, because it is an outrageous investment and you get nothing in return. Another in contrast is the bad bats. That's what a higher gear great return on investment looks like. They're actually fairly reasonable when it comes to Carbantes, stun guns, and stun cuffs. It's the Kairos that make them really bad. But you're able to beat like Relic Grievous with even low star Gear 11 Bad Batch characters. Teams like Darth Revan, Padme, even CLS, those have higher Carbante stun gun, stun cuff counts. But keep these numbers in mind as we go through this list. We're going to start with the Ewoks. Think of these as tiers and general ranges, not as ranks. So the Ewoks, why they are here is they are lower investment, but the return is not great. You do get C-3PO, but as a Grand Arena defense, they're pretty weak, and they don't beat too many things these days, but early on they are very good as a defense. So the earlier you get Ewoks, the more return you get out of them, and that's one thing we've done on the new account, especially because the value of C-3PO is so much higher than it used to be now with the CLS team. And with that new account, before level 85, we had been working towards and farming everything for CLS to get that CLS Chupio team as soon as we possibly could on that new account, and it's already been great. You look at what CLS Chupio gives you these days, you should be rushing to get that, and Ewoks are part of that calculation. Now I want to talk about bounty hunters. They're lower on this list for a couple reasons. One is you need a ton of ability mats for those payouts, and they don't punch up that much for the investment. But this is a bounty hunter squad you can build very cheaply. This is the fastest bounty hunter team that you can build in terms of gear, and all of these characters are going to be farmable well before level 85, and you can have them at 5 to 7 stars before level 85, no issue. But obviously they weren't an ideal team. This is a far more ideal team. Bosk could be here, but I'm leaving Bosk out for this exercise because Bosk is not farmable until you hit level 85, and I care about going after characters like Chewie super early, and this team lets you unlock Chewie at least at 5 stars, very close to hitting level 85. Credits are a problem. And I'm going to be having methods video on my own farming guide in the future. This video though is more intended both towards longtime players and newer players. We're going to hit everything. A lot of the teams that we're going to hit later in this list are going to be talking more to veteran players who may have overlooked some things. Mon Mothma. Now this is a character veteran and longtime players may have put off, probably because they went after a different GL. But what you get with her is a solid defensive squad. Not great, but it's better than a lot of the other defensive squads that you could put down. It's better than Ewoks, it's better than Old Republic, and now with how many teams you need to put down, it's better to have Mon Mothma than some of the alternatives. And what is best about her is you can pair her with very cheaply geared rebel fighters, and that sets off how she in and of herself is a little bit more of a prohibitive gear. It's only 2 stun guns though. It's the 3 chirotechs that hurt, but relatively speaking that's manageable. But she's lower on this list because of those chirotechs and because she does require the 2 zetas. If you don't have both of them on, she doesn't work. And like with Mon Mothma, we are now in the tier of 1 bad character where everyone else is pretty manageable, but there's that one guy that throws it off, and right now it is Fives, who is a really rough character. Not one of the worst, but pretty bad, with 7 Carbantes and 2 stun guns. Shaak Ti has 3 Kairos, which is bad, but you get a lot more in return out of a Shaak Ti and Clones team than you do with Mon Mothma. You get a Grievous counter out of these guys, and Shaak Ti is only 1 stun gun, which makes those 3 Kairos a lot easier to swallow. Rex and Echo are very easy to gear characters. You can throw in Sergeant to make a functional team that's pretty low investment, and swap in ARC Trooper at a later date, or for a few more stun guns you can use Cody instead. And still in the tier of 1 bad character, we have the Geonosians, and Sunfac is the awful gear in this squad. He needs 9 Carbantes, 3 stun guns. Everyone else is pretty manageable, especially Soldier, Poggle, and Spy, who are among the easiest characters to gear in the game. And why they are up higher on this list is because their utility exists throughout the game. You start out with a solid defensive squad, and it transitions very nicely into offense as a counter. As you mature in the game, you get a nice starting fleet that can then swap into your Malevolence fleet, so you never really expire with these guys. plus you get Watt, and because of the shared stats from GeoBrood Alpha, you can get away with a lower gear Sunfac. And that is one of the things that the other squads don't offer as much. And that's why Geos are a little bit higher. Most everyone probably has this, but if you've been delaying this squad, you should be rushing them. There's very little reason not to. In the middle tiers of the list, we have Basilishan and Jedi. The reason they're here at this point in the list, even though this squad is not usable in the endgame, it's because these characters are. So at the early game, you can use Basilishan and build a very solid and cheap Jedi squad. And then as you mature in the game, these characters break off and build other solid factions. But you can start out very early in the game and build a very strong foundational Jedi team for low investment. 250 Carbantes, 150 stun guns, 300 stun cuffs. Really, Anakin's the toughest gear here, even though Bastila needs a couple stun guns. And as an alternative, there's some even cheaper to gear characters. Hermit Yoda, if you're a player who hasn't geared him up, Hermit Yoda is easy. Gear Hermit Yoda up. He has a lot of hollow projectors and that's about it. And Mace Windu is among like the top 5 or 10 easiest characters in the game. Hopefully we see him get reworked at some point. My faith is getting shaky. Now anybody in a big guild is going to have these characters, but I've seen players in smaller guilds or players in the mid game and newer, they haven't built out these separatist squads. And I get why, because in the new account I haven't done it either, because Geos were able to get me Padme, and there are other characters that are more important earlier in the game, but they are really low investment, and as you're building out that depth, you should be getting a Newt team as early as is practical for your roster. Watt, I sometimes see players who have him at that 4-star unlock where they don't have him leveled up. He needs 1 Cairo, and even at the low star count, he is usable. He just needs to throw on 1 tech and then he can die. That's all you need from him. Gear him up. He is 1 stun gun, 1 Cairo away from making your roster better. Now, Droideka here, that's the flex position. I threw him into this group because he's a separatist who is common to be putting in the new team, but there's also Nest or Ventress, who are some flex options in that slot, which would bring down the investment even lower to having a Newt squad. And or as you're building towards other versions, those characters can be put in there as alternates. The Empire, even though players who've been playing a year or more definitely have them, have to be on this list, because when we're talking about low investment, big return, very few teams give you what the Empire does. So if you are one of those newer players and you don't have the Empire yet, you don't have to put much into them to get a solid Empire team. Vader needs 3 Carbantes and a stun gun. Tarkin should be there for his fleet, but other than that, you can build a solid team for almost nothing. Veers is cheap, Gideon is cheap, Palpatine is one of the easiest characters in the game, and you can throw in characters like TIE Fighter Pilot and have another flex option in there who's also extremely cheap. These last 2 squads here are 2 of the biggest low investment, huge return squads in the game that I see veteran players all the time not having in their rosters. You can get these characters up and running really fast with minimal investment. There's 3 stun guns in the case of the Night Sisters. Zombie needs to be at gear 10 minimum, but some of these other characters you can get away with a little less gear. I've left Telzine and Spirit at gear 11 because as they die off, they're only helping the Ventress and Daka Zeta's Ventress, Rampage, and Daka serve again. Now, it helps that Ventress and Daka are at relics, but you can build them up over time to that point. This is a great squad. It handles Relic Grievous teams, and it handles a lot of teams that don't have a lot of AoEs. So if you're one of those players who have been putting off this squad, there is no reason to. You can get them up and running with a very small investment, and that is what we are looking for, is building out that depth. You can use them on offense, you can use them on defense, you can use them as a huge counter. Get this team up and running. And I use Spirit, but you can put in Acolyte or Talia for even less than the investment of Spirit. And we are wrapping up this video with the Imperial Troopers. This team is incredible. They are a low investment team that gets you a huge return. You've been watching my Grand Arenas. I talk about this all the time, where I use them against Relic Night Sisters, those Relic Phasma teams that you see, SLKR players throw on defense, the Rebel teams that you see JML players throw on defense. For a super low investment, you have a solid counter to some of those weaker Relic teams that allows you to then open up some of your stronger characters to throw and deploy up against the rest of a defense. This is a great return on investment, and I see vets all the time without this team, way more than I see vets who don't have Night Sisters. This is the most common team that I see players not have, even at 6 million GP and up. Get the Imperial Troopers. You can, if you're a longtime player, you probably have the resources to get this team up and running by next week. Moff Gideon is a new character with no Chirotechs. Stormtrooper, I see a lot of players stop him at gear 8. When you throw on that one stun gun he's asking for at gear 8, you can take him to gear 11 right away. Veers is super cheap. Stark, a little steep with the amount of Carbantes he wants, but there's no stun guns. Death Trooper is in here as the option because there's 2 stun guns, although asking a lot. Snow Trooper is the next one, and Snow Trooper needs a bunch of stun cuffs. Way too many. I think the 2 stun guns is easier to swallow. Other characters like Range, he also needs a bunch of stun cuffs. So Death Trooper is actually one of the cheaper options, although one of the harder ones to farm. So early on the game, you can throw in that Snow Trooper. And what is nice is this team is so flexible. You can swap in Snow or Range, Dark, depending on what you're going up against and how you want to use them. Thank you to everyone for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel. This video here took me an excessive amount of time to make. Fortunately, I do not have the coding background to know how to deal with that API data, so this was done manually, and there's probably some error in those spreadsheets. But this is a video that is been on the to-do list for a long time because this is some of the philosophical foundation of this channel, so I obsessed about it and took far too long with it, so I'm glad to be finally done with it. As a thank you to everyone who has been supporting the channel and who has subscribed to the channel, I've been doing this on Discord, but I've been doing roster reviews. So if you find me on Discord, the link is down in the description. You don't have to join the community, but message me there because it's the easiest way for me to do this. Send me proof that you have subscribed to the channel. I don't want people exploiting it or abusing this because it takes a long time. I'm doing 3 of these a day, and it could potentially get out of hand. You can imagine if we get hundreds and I'm only doing 3 a day, it's going to take me a while. This is going to remain open from now until I hit 1,000 subscribers. The idea here is I'm trying to push up those subscriber numbers and hit that mark for monetization, because that is the best way to support this channel. So thank you again for watching. Be safe out there, everyone, and be excellent to each other. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.